Shalom, I'm Rabbi Scott Sekulow, Senior Rabbi at Congregation Beth Adonai and host of the Messianic Hour. And this is a special report on the situation of President Barack Obama with his stance of Israel going back to the 48 borders, and the problems that's going to bring to Israel from not only a political point of view, but also a biblical point of view. This can be in a multi-part series. First part, we're going to look at it from a scriptural point of view, why this is not in God's plan to have Jerusalem divided. Then we'll look at it from a political point of view and how it's going to deal with protecting the citizens of Israel in the Holy Land. This is a very critical time, and as believers in Messiah and as traditional Jews, we need to stand together to make sure that our government knows, our senators and our representatives and the president know that we are not for a divided Jerusalem, and either is God. So I want to first take a look at the very first scripture which we need to look at, which is in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 3. It clearly says, God here is speaking to Abraham and making a promise to him. It says, I will bless those who bless you, and dwell and dishonor those who curse you. So in other words, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So God is making a specific promise here that we will be blessed by the children of Abraham. Who is the children of Abraham? It is Israel, the Jewish people. So we are to receive a blessing by blessing Israel. Right now, we're not blessing Israel when we're doing this. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, Bill Cohn, who wrote the book Eye to Eye, he's a White House correspondent, has shown how major events have taken place within 48 hours of any government, including the Israeli government, going against God's plan. You know, it's interesting that with everything going on right now in the world, and some false prophet claiming that Judgment Day is going to happen on May 21st. Well, Friday, as we're doing this, President Obama is meeting in the White House with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and within that 24-hour period, I pray that nothing does happen, because I don't want the devil to get any credit for what God is doing. But this is a major problem, a major situation, and this is how people will get pulled away, those false prophets who the devil uses to try to make people think, oh, this is going to happen, or something's going on, or look what's God, that the judgment day is coming. No man knows the day or the hour. The scripture is very clear about that, and the man who's prophesizing and doing all that is totally off base, but that's not the point of this message. The point of this message is dealing with President Obama's statement that Israel must go back to the 67 borders. What that really means is the 48 borders, because the 67 borders is once where it was before from 1948, when Israel became a nation and the land was divided by the UN. And it's interesting to note too that Jordan was given the land. This had nothing to do with the Palestinians. This was Israelis and the Jordanians. And the Palestinians do have a homeland. It's called Jordan, and people have to realize that. This land was promised to the Israelites. It was given to them. They have lived there. We see proof right here in the scripture. I want to take a look at another scripture. We need to go to the book of Zechariah, chapter 12. We're going to look at 12, verse 3 and verse 9. First in verse 3, it says, in Zechariah 12:3, on that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the people. All who lift it will surely hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. Right now the only major country that stays with Israel is the United States. We are going to see the United States one day, and unfortunately it could be one day soon, turn its back on Israel. This is a major problem. The Palestinians are already trying to make an agreement through the UN in which they will be allowed to declare themselves a sovereign nation. The president addressed this, but he basically has given them a okay to do it, in the sense that he says that he is wanting to give the land back, and he also mentions that the only real problem is the fact that the government is now controlled by terrorists. We're going to talk about that in the second half, though. So here's a key scripture here. Then in verse 9 it says, And on that day, I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. We are going to be in big trouble if our country goes against Israel and specifically Jerusalem. And that's what we're seeing taking place here with our president. He is trying to become, not commander-in-chief, but negotiator-in-chief. He is not the man to make peace in that land. Only our Messiah can bring the true peace that will be brought into that land. That's the only time we're going to see peace in the land, when every knee bow and every tongue confess that Yeshua HaMashiach is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, not only over Jerusalem, but all the world. And yes, even on that day, our Arab brothers will turn to him, as we're seeing happening already. But we need to make sure that we're standing firm with Israel. Luke 21, verse 24, clearly predicts this will happen. It says, they will fall by the sword, being the Jewish people will fall by the sword and be led away as captives to all the nations. This happens with the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 and 135 AD. And we see them go to all the nations. And it says, Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. 1948, this comes to an end, or is the beginning. We see here that Israel becomes a nation, but its capital in 1948 is not Jerusalem, it's Tel Aviv. Matter of fact, it's not until 1967 that this takes place, that Israel once again takes control of Jerusalem. It's done by taking over during the 6-Day War. Midway through the war, Jerusalem is captured. It was going against the UN, but Israel decided to retake the land for that very purpose, to make sure that Jerusalem was once again under the control of the Jewish people. And with that, we see Jewish revival break out all over the world. More Jewish people have come to know the Lord in the last 40 years than in all of history combined. Why? The fig tree is blossoming, like it talks about in Luke 24. We're seeing this take place. The time of the Gentiles has come to an end. That clock is ticking. We're seeing God's fulfillment take place. And it says that generation will certainly not pass away until all these things happen. Now, a generation in the Torah can be 40 years, it can be 70 years, it can be 120 years. But here's the key point. We know when it begins. It begins in 1967, when Jerusalem, which was the land was left desolate for almost 2,000 years, is reborn again, and Israel is once again in control of it. Now, here's the interesting thing to note. Most of the sites, when we go to Israel, when you're in the land, most of these religious sites are in East Jerusalem. We're going to put up a map right now so you can understand what's going on. Sites like the Via Dolorosa, sites like the Holy Sepulchre, the Mount of Olives, the Mount of Beatitudes, the Garden Tomb. All of these are on the east side of Jerusalem. Yeshua is returned to the east side. He's not coming for a divided Jerusalem. He's coming for a land that God has ordained and promised to his children Israel. It is the apple of his eye. It's the promise. It's where it all began with Isaac, and where with the binding of Isaac, and where it all ends with our Messiah returning to Jerusalem. This is a key point to understand, and why we see that it's not in God's plan to give up the land of Jerusalem. You need to stand with us as we tell our president, no. I want to encourage you, contact the White House. Contact your congressmen and women. Let them know. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue. Matter of fact, when you look in the House and the Senate, the majority of the members, both parties, are in favor of supporting Israel. This is a situation that our president has taken. President Bush tried to do something similar. It didn't work. President Clinton tried to do something similar. It didn't work. Bush Sr. tried to do something. It didn't work. The only one who really got it right was Reagan. He kind of left Jerusalem alone and Israel alone, because he saw when you went and tried to mess with them, things happen. We also can go all the way back to Carter. Same problem. We realize that when we bless Israel, we get blessed. And when we curse Israel, we get cursed. I want you to stand with us, get involved. Also, I want to encourage you to listen to our weekly radio show. You can go to our website at rabbiscott.com. Get involved. Let your congressmen and women know what's going on. We're going to be back with part 2, looking at it from a political point of view. We'll be back, and you can check the next video out. Oh, what's up?